I'm Kent Olofsson, and I'm the main supervisor for Bertrand, who will have his 50% seminar today, which means that you're halfway through your PhD studies. Hey. Indeed, an interesting point in the studies, of course, where you are doing a lot of work that you will talk about and we will discuss today. Still work to be done, still possibilities to develop and change and so on. So it's an interesting point in the studies, I would say. And you will do a presentation. I will also say that we have Karin Johansson here, who is one of the second supervisors here, and also Jan-Erik Olsen, who is also part, we can say, of one part of the project, where you also are one of the second supervisors. And I'm very happy to have Esther Venrooij here as the opponent for Bertrand today. And Esther, your background is as a musician and composer, and you are working then also in mixed media, we can say, or with installation, video, we can say in the visual arts as well, broad practice. And you are a professor of mixed media.
And a professor in architecture also. So it's part of
and in Belgium, at the Luca Art School.
In the University of Leuven, so on both.
Very happy to have you here. And the schedule today is you will make a short presentation of your project, just an introduction to your project first, and followed by response or a reading of the material of the work that you have sent to Esther, and then there will be a discussion between the two of you. And we haven't really set the time frame, but I guess we'll go, the whole thing around maybe 12:30, and we take a break where we maybe after 1 hour or so, where we feel it's good in the discussion. So I say, I'll hand it over to you, Bertrand.
Well, thank you very much, Esther. Thank you very much, Manuel. So I will make a brief presentation because most of you already know what I'm working on, and I will go very fast to the material. So then about the some of the draft articles that I'm working on and all the other material, we will discuss that with Esther. And I think that's basically it. So so when I started, my background, to be honest, my first classes that I took in art were in plastic arts before music. I was born in a music family, but the first lessons that I took were in clay, in painting and everything. And then the guitar was always there. My family has been always musicians, and my uncle was like a guitar genius, a student of Segovia. So to approach the guitar, I felt very responsible. So I was always afraid to take the guitar because I was afraid to make something that was not correct. It was already so precious that I was always afraid to go to the guitar. Then suddenly my uncle, he passes away, and that's the same day when we came back from the funeral, I took the guitar. So then, so I started to play the guitar, and everything went quite well. When I was 19, I went to France, to Paris, and I went to Den Haag to make my bachelor and my master degree in guitar. Then went to Spain, continued on the contemporary music, because I was completely on that. And then I went to Portugal. When I was in Spain, I was organizing a festival, and I had an ensemble, a contemporary music ensemble. And I found my way very tight. I was not feeling very well inside that situation. I felt like a kind of a victim of programs and a victim of artistic directors. So I had no artistic liberty. So at that moment, I said, okay, maybe I should expand my practice and try other things outside the guitar. So at that moment, also during those years, I was reading a lot of Walter Benjamin. So that's when I think this was one of the first, or probably the first article I read about by Benjamin, is the destructive character. And this is very interesting because it told me, in a way, he was talking to me and said, you know, nothing is permanent, you know, and you know, you see ways everywhere. So I felt like he was. I mean, when you read a good book or when you read a good thing, you think that you're talking to you, you know. So I felt that, and of course, at home in Mexico, we have a lot of birds, and I understood that birds and animals in general possess this destructive character. So I said, okay, let's go to Portugal and make a fine arts diploma, master degree. And I went to Portugal to almost stop my music practice to develop an artistic plastic visual art practice. And I understood that this non-permanency of the character, this destructive character, not in a bad way, but in a way that you see ways everywhere, took me to practice music otherwise, which was when I came to the idea of doing a plastic extension of music. So you can see, I mean, the birds always install where they want, they have no problem with that, but a human being is more careful in a way, you know, we have to respect the history, we are victims of society, and we are completely attached to objects in a way, less than the animals, you know. So, for example, one of the things that amazed me is that animals and human beings will leave traces in a way. So you can see here a dog paw print from Paris, and you can see here a human handprint about 14,000 years ago in the Borneo island. So it is a human character, it's an animal character to leave traces. So I said, okay, let's try to find a connection between the music and the visual or plastic arts, in a way that we can find a way to extend the practice in a parallel universe where performance can have like an anachronic position in which I don't follow the same pattern as everyone. So I mean, if I would continue my practice as a performer, I would continue in the same line, performing the same works. So I wanted to create like a parallel universe in which I could create my own path in a way. So, well, okay, I will not go through this video because everybody knows it. It's the video of the visually impaired and the hearing impaired. So, also, during my years when I was reading a lot, I came upon Susan Sontag, and I came about with this magnificent article about against interpretation. So, in a way, it confirmed, you know, what Benjamin said before, and then have Sontag, I mean, judging how interpretation works and how it could be a liberating act in a way. So plastic extension came when I found myself in this situation. So for me, music performance stopped in the music score, the instrumental practice, and the performance, and then go back to the score and work. So I was inside this circle, and I said, okay, let's try to make something more complex, having this knowledge that I acquired in Portugal of the practice. And also, one thing that it's important to say is that all the plastic works that I work, I do it with my own hands. The idea is that the practice that the impregnation of the performance can be imprinted also in the materials that I'm working on. So that the same hand gestures, the same memory, the same muscle memory, the same ideas that are practiced on the instrument, on the performance of the instrument, can be also imprinted in the material that I'm working on and I'm extending in space. So this is how the creative process of the plastic extension. So you can see the music score can create directly a plastic extension. It creates the instrumental practice, it creates the performance, but it creates like a kind of you can see a more complex hermeneutic cycle in a way. So this hermeneutic cycle can lead me to a more creative way of understanding the music score that I'm performing. So I will go to some examples very fast. So this was probably the first plastic extension I did in 2016. It was the year when it was 1 year after I arrived to Portugal. And I worked, this was important because it's a kind of a tableau vivant installation and plastic extension. It's like a kind of the first work that I worked on. So this is a piece, this presentation is a piece by Elena Mendoza, and it's a guitar piece that is based on a capriccio by Francisco de Goya. And the capriccio Francisco de Goya, so what I tried to create, you can see here the capriccio, it's on the left. So what I tried to do is to understand how, what I was very curious to see how to get inside the capriccio. What I want to see is have like an internal view. So that way, this character, which is on the left, on the of the capriccio, I wanted to see what he was seeing. So I created this kind of installation where you can see through the masks. So once the people are interacting with the piece, with the installation, you recreate the capriccio and it becomes a tableau vivant. So you can see three people that are interacting with the piece, and you can see that it's a recreation of the space and the piece by Goya. And what you hear there, of course, it's the performance of my performance. You can hear what I'm playing. So it was like a very basic plastic extension. You know, it was not very, from my point of view, not very creative, but I mean it's the first steps into a new world. So you can see through the mask there were what I call like perception points. So the mask pushes the viewer to go to the mask and see through the mask. So these perception points were these three that you can see. There's two boxes and the third mask, which is on the left, on the left. Yeah. So basically, so this is an extract. I will show you a very short extract about what you can see inside of one of the boxes, and you can hear the performance. So, what you saw there was material from Segundo de Chomón, which was a cinema creator at the same time than Georges Méliès from Spain, and of course Luis Buñuel. Goya also is from, so Segundo de Chomón and Goya and Buñuel, they are both from Aragon, from the region of Spain, so I wanted to create like a triangle of geographic triangle between the three artists from Aragon. Later, when I was already in Paris, I had no space. So I arrived to Paris in a 14 square meter apartment. So I had no more space to create installations or to do whatever I wanted. So at the same time, I was playing a piece by a French composer, Elisabeth Angot, and this piece had the particularity of having 66 positions, the whole piece. So it was curious that I found that. So I wanted to make like a plan. So the idea is that I wanted to imprint those positions in paper, and since I had so little space, I wanted to create a big installation, which is, this is like 3 meters by 1.5 meters, something like this. And I had to work in little paper. So I said, okay, let's try and do this. So you can see these are the hand positions. I wanted to imprint them. So once you get, you see to the piece, you can see a plan, a mapping of all the positions that you can. So you can see, for example, down, you can see a glissando of the same fingers that are doing a glissando. So it's like a mapping of the piece. The intensity that you see on the paper, you can see they are lighter and stronger. You have it's on the fingers also, and they are called. So the level of graphite, you have different levels of graphite, and also the intensity that is pushed on the paper depending on how long the position is in time. So how long you have the position in time during the piece. So you can see the map again here of the whole piece. So later on, I was very interested about the movement of the hands or the movement of the body. So I created this piece that's I called force ergonomics because it was like a kind of trying to trace, without having the technology, trying to trace the movement of the hands that were done in certain pieces. So it's like a tracking motion capture, but the analogical one. So I wanted to fix these kind of movements in space and play with them. So it's strings for improvisation. So you can see this piece now is exposed in Portugal, and each week they change the position. So you know the position changes completely. So you can see some examples that they take. Well, yeah, I was already interested in the movements. Later on that I was working on this muscle memory thing. So I understood that many of the defaults that we have in music as a performer come from bad memory habits, or that the body has learned bad memory habits and create. That's when you go to a performance and you miss and you try to do this because you work bad, you have like bad habits, and these bad habits are part of the muscle memory. And we'll talk about the muscle memory a lot afterwards if you want. So, for example, I took a little piece by a composer, a Mexican composer, Manuel N. Ponce. So what I tried to do was try to translate to see what was the problem in this very little movement that I was doing in millimeters, centimeters. I translated into 2 by 2 meters canvases. So you can see this is the extension of that passage, and you see there's graphite and ink. The graphite relating to the practice, and the ink relating to the final object. So you can see all the tries, you can see all the movement. So the idea is to extend. What I took is to zoom out the movement that I was doing on the left hand, zoom it out in a 2 by 2 canvases, and imitating the movements that I was working on. So this helped me to unlearn the muscle memory, and at the same time understand the passage. So it was like zoom out, but then zooming in and trying to work inside the passage. This passage, for example, you have here, and it's extended here. So these are very, 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 you can see here the movement is minimum. It's very, I mean, for guitar it's really centimeters. So it was translated into this by 2 by 2 canvases. This chord took me time to understand what voice I wanted to get out, because in guitar you have the same hand doing the same voices, 4 different voices. So I wanted to take out one of the voices. I want to take the G sharp. I want to make it sound more, and at the same time play the 4 notes at the same time. So this is the movement that I tried to. So this is like a kind of a fixed hand, but you can trace also the movement in order to find the weight to play the G sharp. So when I arrived here in Sweden, the idea now I want to make like kind of a mapping of what's the structure of the thesis. So we found a lot of ideas, and the idea now is to work on certain texts and also make kind of visual or plastic art material. So the structure will be some text on etymology. Etymology is very important for me. I try to always, etymology helps you to see how a word can have differences, how the word has changed in time, how we interpret, the interpretation has changed towards time, and in a way, that's what I wanted to see in music also at the same time. So it's a very direct relationship between the etymology and the music, how we understand it. So the temptation of the founder seeker, this is an article that I'm working on to talk about artistic research mainly, which I relate a lot with Antonio Cabezon, which was a Renaissance composer, blind Renaissance composer, that he had this double life as a composer of mass, like a, how would we say, like he was in an economical exchange, very basic, like composing for the mass and winning money, and also had free time to compose tientos and fantasies, to compose like kind of an artistic work. So the same artist, you have the composer that was composing the mass to pay for the more creative one. So there was this dichotomy of the artist, so how the artist can vouch, how the artisan can vouch for the artist in the same persona. The other one is on performance, of course, so you can understand that performance goes, if we go to the etymology of the word, performance, it makes to take form. So that's why I went to plastic extension. So when I understood performance, it performare, so to take form. So I said, okay, yeah, it's kind of logical to understand that a performance to take form, even if it is as in a stage, it can also take form in space as an object that is fixed on time. Also, the forming muscle memory, and this is important, and it has, kind of as a performer, as a classical guitarist, I understood a lot how the muscle memory works and how we have to unlearn to avoid a lot of things in performance and to really hear and unlearn the muscles, the bad habits that we have adopted. The doppelganger trauma in music, which is about recording mainly, and the ghosts that we are living on with in YouTube, for example. We constantly live with ghosts. One morning I woke up and I went to YouTube, and I was searching for versions of Kreisleriana by Schumann, and when I was searching, I said, my God, I'm just hearing dead people. And I felt like the Sixth Sense, this film, like I talk with dead people, and I said, I'm hearing dead people, So I was, and then I understood also that the recording, when we make a recording, we are leaving a trace of someone. We are having this doppelganger, we are creating this doppelganger that also affects in the market. If we go to the market, I have to compete against myself when I have a recording outside. So I have to compete against myself when I go to make a live performance. People say, I already heard you. I already heard your CD. I already saw your video. Some people, yeah, we'll go later. So all these ideas of the doppelganger, how we create doppelgangers through recordings, and how we live among these ghosts, going to the Mark Fisher thing and Derrida side, like going like this dissociation of the ghosts and how we live with them and how they influence our performance and how they influence also our lives. So this is a thing that I'm working on. The thoughts about the score, of course, how we can extend them, how can we understand them, from ornamentation until plastic extension. That's kind of the idea. And also about poetry, because I'm writing actually now certain poetry that is kind of onomatopoeic, so non-etymologically based. So it's like a kind of a free text that comes from the will of the body. So then I have these study materials. Sorry, it's taking a long time.
No, I'm listening.
Okay. So then I have this study materials, which is parallel interpretation of the studies by Heitor Villa-Lobos, a Brazilian composer, that he wrote for guitar. So each of the studies has a very technical, precise work. This is for ligados, this is for the scale, this is for the arpeggio. So I wanted to translate also that study into materials. So I made like also associate each study to a study and material. So the first I did was with clay. So I was studying on clay. Then I worked on a loop video. I was in love with loop videos since Vine arrived at that moment years ago. and I wanted to work on loop video. So I wanted to create a loop video, but that cannot be a loop video. So there's a video that I did on this. And also right now we are actually working on a VR piece with Margot. She's teaching me how to work with Maya and all these very complex problems for me. But yeah, I'm working on it, and we're working on this. So yeah, the idea is to associate a technique to a material. So as a plastic artist, it's very important to make a study on materials, and also as a guitarist, it's very important to make a study on certain aspects of your technique. Then, of course, it's a very important chapter on blindness that I'm specifically working with Jan-Erik Osen. And this is we did already in September a small workshop. That it's a 3-hour workshop associating sounds with music, sounds with materials and different materials. How we can create like a kind of a new alphabet of music with touching and with sensations and verbal association. And this is attached to also to 3 installations that I want to make. So the idea is to have material. I will explain that later, which comes. And then the motion capture and dance, which is basically trying to motion capture the movement in order to create a choreography. And also some other plastic extensions that are associated to the muscle memory, which is the Phantomeron, and Inhabit, which is about birds, how we can teach birds music. And of course, at the end, tableau vivant, which is my fetish thing on music, which is the opposite of the plastic extension. It's a sound extension of an image. So that's how we close the circle on this proposed structure of the thesis. So these are the clay extension. You can see this is the study number 1 by Villalobos. It was very difficult to work on the to understand that the clay also when you make these very small squares to make these holes inside the clay and doesn't break. So it was very interesting to work with clay like that, and also making the different shapes that fit things. You know, so it was a kind of I kind of understood clay very well, so it was interesting for me. This is the one that is showing right now here, the Carminic tensor. This is a study on the red pigment of cochineal red that comes from the cactus in Mexico. It comes from a bacteria that is formed. It's like a kind of a fungus that is formed on the cactus, and when you take it out, you treat it, and it becomes a red. This very intense red. You can see it here, and of course. This piece is associated with the quantity of red that you see in each frame, meaning it's associated to the tension created with the strings and the position. So when you go higher, you have more tension on the strings, so more red. So that's basically it. This is what we're working right now. This is the VR, so you can see some extract videos that have been made. That this is the mocap video that we have. You can see this is how it's recorded. And the idea now is to make a VR game in which you are flying around clouds and you have an arrow. So the idea is that you can throw your arrow to those clouds and hear what's happening inside. So what you will hear inside each cloud is the measures that are being played of the piece. But you will hear them all at the same time. So the idea is that you're in a kind of a universe inside that study. It's a D major study. And it's for slurs. So you can see here some of the material, how it's done. This is like the inside the cloud. And you have what I'm working on right now at the moment. Some raw examples, It looks like kind of a Mario Bros. Cloud, So this is the installation that I'm working on for the visually impaired and the blind. So the idea came when I wanted to create this big 12-meter harp that would replace the white cane. The white cane is what usually blind people use, and In Spanish, which is very funny, it's called tiento. Tiento means also the white cane. So the tiento is also the forms of music that Cabezon was writing. So the idea was to replace the white cane by tuned strings, so when you are walking through the installation, you are performing the tiento by Cabezon. This project started in 2016, we are in 2022 and it's still not, I mean, it's a huge project, but I hope it will arrive. So the idea, the workshop we made in September was to make this sound test for the visually impaired, to create this new texture, collect the data for the new textures and materials, create a catalog of visual and plastic sounds, and also once the catalog is created, I will have all the material to transcribe another tiento by Cabezon for the hearing impaired. So the material that was given from the visually impaired will be translated to the hearing impaired in a way that I am trying to erase myself from the performance. I mean, trying that the data also goes directly to the hearing impaired, and then at the end make an installation of another tiento, another ballad, another installation in which it will be interacting for the visually impaired and the hearing impaired with all the material collected. This is the dance piece with the motion capture, which is based from the, it originates from the sound of, from the music by Brian Ferryholt. It's called Kurzgeschatten 2. So I create Kurzgeschatten 2. And it comes also, Kurzgeschatten is a small article, but not small, it's a medium article by also Walter Benjamin. And he talks about the shadows, how the shadows are very short when you arrive to the at 12. You have there's no shadows. I don't know. I forgot the word. Huh? Yeah, but there's a word on not equinox.
Senate.
Yeah, the Senate. Exactly. Yeah, the Senate. So you can see all the markers here on the hands. Always done. And you can see now a small video where I'm performing, and you can see the material here. Yeah, so the idea now with this motion capture data that we have is to create, to send this information to bodies of 6 avatars that we will create. So it's like a kind of a choreographic score. This choreographic score will be given to the dancers, and the dancers will perform in space the movements of the piece without the music. So you will have only the choreography that is translated, the hand movement will be translated to dancers, to these impossible avatars. And the idea also is to have this alive and unprecise performance, as Ferrigno does also, by giving so many information, so many parameters, to give all these kind of complex parameters to the human body. So the last thing about the scherzo, this is on the tableau vivant. So this is the last project that I'm working on. I already finished this piece. And so now we are searching for schools to do it. So now we have only, the idea was to create 70. There are 90 games played in this painting. And what I did was to give music to each and one of the games, create music for them, in order to be performed by children. And it was a project that was, I had a prize in Germany for this. And in Germany they were searching for the music schools to perform this piece. So at that moment it was just a post-COVID time. So what they wanted to do was to have internet or internet version. So I said, okay, let's do these kind of pieces. I will write the scores, and they will record it with their telephones and then send it to me. And in order to have the 70 games online, playing at the same time and sounding at the same time. And you can choose, you can make your own soloists, you know, they are in loop. So since the videos are in loop and the durations are completely different, you have an infinite time of performance. I mean, the music will be constantly changing, so that's why I say, okay, scherzo infinito, you know, the infinite game. So this is, for example, I will show you one example. Esquila means in Basque means bell. So I said, okay, I'll put it. There was no name for this game. There were many versions. There were there was a Dutch version. There was an American version. There were many different versions. You know. So I said, okay, I will name it on my own and put it in Basque, which is completely awkward, you know. To put. But, so you have here the score, which is quite simple. So this is one of the 70. And you can see here the performance. Yeah. So it goes on loop. You understand the. So yeah, that's basically it, the work I'm doing right now.
Thank you.
Thank
that
you.
Was, quite a lot and quite detailed. So,
I wanted to make it short, but at the same time, it's good that I show some examples of the structure. You know how it's. Trying to take out some examples and the work in progress and everything, you know, so you can have a clear idea of the thesis also, and also be open to suggest and say, okay, you know, Bertrand, you are doing this bad, or you should do more, or here, extend here, write more on this, or write less about that. So since we're on the middle, no, it's a good moment to hear your opinions and hear also Esther, no, that
Please, Esther, we hand it over to you on all this.
Thank you so much. It's very broad, bright, ever-changing practice. Always new stuff coming in, and that's why I have made these notes. I'm just going to talk a bit, and you can intervene anytime you want, and no worries, and etc. And one of the things I want to start with is the title and the words, and it's about, I think it's also about now trying to find the right words, not so much what I think or other people think, but they fit. Well, one of the things that stood out to me is the idea of plastic extension. So plastic, for me, that was like plastic. Can you elaborate a bit? What does it represent to you? Yeah. This idea of plastic.
Yeah, I mean, many people understand that plastic is the material. When I talk about the plastic, it's about the plasticity and the movement, the plasticity of the movement. You know, Since I want to fix music in time, I want to make like a plasticity in space. So
I think that's really definitely worth a debate on what it should be. And also this idea of extension, because you changed a little bit position during your talk about it. For instance, there was one point that it wasn't, that you talked about it is an extension, and then at one point you talk about a parallel. And I think that's really a difference. And it doesn't matter what it is for me, but I think it helps things with your own practice to clarify it. And one of the things I also noticed is that there are words coming back that seem to be important in the text. For instance, the aspect of mirror and mirroring, and I had more like superimposing or superimposition or mapping, you said at one point. And one of the things I think when we talk about artistic research, for me is very interesting is the methodology. And this is also when I apply for funding at universities, they shoot at us because our lack of methodology. And then it's not because we do not have a methodology, we somehow are unable to articulate it. And I think there are things happening in what you're doing that are unsaid. And one of the things I was wondering is, are we going to be able to articulate this? Maybe it is possible to articulate it. And then we go back to what I saw and the works. And I thought it has a very clear methodology. Everything is dealing with time. It doesn't matter what you're doing. For me, and everything like next door is related to time. For me, that's like you can say it's a graphic score, or it is a scenography or a scenario, which is there. But it's about time, and you also notice that you started to say these things like "I'm freezing time." Actually, with the installation you did with the mask, it is a static image that is already somehow has more dynamic in it, but you solidify it even more with these blocks of minimalism, and then things are fixed. But then we watch again the movement. So there is this thing about working in series and working in time that's still happening. And another word in what you're saying a lot, I will give you these two
it's just
made some notes, is that you do indeed talk about traces. So I was wondering if we talk about structure of a dissertation, or even to think about your own work, I think there should be a change of approach, in the sense that you don't throw anything out, but there seems to be a focus on like things you want to say, but I think you have to somehow work through some methodology, like what is happening, is this indeed a translation, this aspect of translating, the reading. And for me it's different. I feel sometimes it's not about translation, because it's a sort of one-on-one thing. So you have something and it becomes something else, but it's like really related. So it's more of a reading than of translating, something like this. And this translation is also sometimes happening in 2 steps or 1 step. So it's like 1 step, 2 step. And then it's interesting to see where you are as a maker or performer. It's like it goes through you and then it goes there. I see you started to make also these schedules, and it's again this linearity I find very funny. It was like, he's moving there, he's thinking there, and he's going there. It's really musical thinking. And I thought like this is an interesting aspect, like musical thinking within a visual practice or an art practice. So and then what is then the musical thinking, and how does it work? And one of the things that I also noticed with these traces, because I can link other artists to this, is that because we are trained in watching these lines on paper and then moving into time and start dividing time from others. So there is this, and we do it in a very horizontal way, in a Western way, and then you have different readings like from other cultures. So there is this sense of time, and it is also very even. So there is a rhythm there, and it's really, for me, relating to the bars. It's really, and I started to notice that all this musical language is still there, and it's like. And it's like it's like a mirror. It's like a one-on-one translation. And what I also noticed that from working there is this super fascination with this hand.
Yeah.
It's all about this. In thinking, where's the rest of Bertrand? Like his feet.
Yeah.
No idea. Or this, or his thinking, or his, his brows, or his, I don't know, breath, or something like. But there's this total fixation on his left hand. I don't know why it came up. There is this famous composer who made only pieces for his left hand. It's who lost. I think it's the brother. No, there was a famous pianist who was a brother of.
The Wittgenstein, Paul Wittgenstein lost the war. And and he wrote for Ravel. Ravel wrote.
But I think that sometimes I have a feeling that I'm looking at. It's like a self-portrait. What I'm seeing. There is Bertrand looking this way always. And I always notice that also in the imagery we take the same position, and it's like this is visually almost unimportant. And that is something to think about.
Of course. And it's important. I mean, I will tell you.
And it's because but it's a sort of self-portrait. So for me, that's also this left. But I also started to see how you work as a methodology. You work a lot on deduction and extraction. So these are things that are clearly in the way you work. And then I'm wondering, what I'm thinking, can you let go of particular things or move into more sophisticated materials? When you talk about, I work with clay and and I was thinking maybe the idea to move into that materiality is interesting, but there is even more interesting materiality within that area, which is not clay. For instance, one of the interesting things of ceramics is there. It has a lot to do with some of my students. They work with like ceramics, which are in the end up as a cup, and it's a paper filter thin ceramics, which is like bright white, the color you would like. Has this touch. It is a very intimate material, and I was thinking even in that area sometimes you can move like more into depth into why a particular material. You touch sometimes the most obvious materialities, and I think because you're so specific in music that there can be the same specificity in that area. For me one of the things is what I like a lot about is that you open up this idea of you have the performer, it's moving into a medium, so it's going into surroundings of your surroundings sometimes. This longing for installation is, I think, has to do with this. And we're actually talking about the Umwelt in that sense. And but everybody has a different Umwelt, and I think there you can even be more specific in what you would like to enter and what kind of materialities there can be. The objectifying, the solidifying of things, this freeze in time. Sometimes I think I'm wondering about other things. There are some questions that are not asked. For instance, taking that position, but I'm wondering like, how can I move as a viewer? How does it work for me? And in what sense do I need to experience the original with the translation or the deduction or the extension? Do I need to feel the original, yes or no? These are things that are sort of unanswered. And also with this circle of the visually impaired and the hearing impaired, I think there is also other opportunities that can come in, like maybe it's possible if you say I want to move out, but then I'm more interested in developing questions how to let their ideas come in, and how would you do this? I think for that project, but there are so many projects in the doctoral project. one of the advices I can give is to maybe decide what project is in and what is out. I think everything you do is in any case interesting, but sometimes for building up a thesis, it's not helpful. And I think, for instance, that what came to me was this. I'm very interested in this time and musical thinking and how does it work within. And this last piece I just is really lovely, but I'm not sure how to fit something like that in. But maybe that's one of the things I can give you assurance. You don't need to fit everything in you do within the project. But there should be like bigger themes you can work on, and there should be more shaving on the, this longing for vocabulary. Well, one of the people I know who did a lot of computing and there is a famous choreographer, Merce Cunningham, who did at one point did a lot of computing as a way to somehow fix his choreographies. And there is a series of works by William Forsythe, who did with the lines. He directly drew them in the video. So those are, and then you have Trisha Brown,
of course,
who did
the program.
So but if you can see, so they are superimposing. And so Trisha Brown is like making this movement, and then you have William Forsythe, who's, and for me, what is interesting, that's very much linear thinking. But there are now a couple of contemporary choreographers from Brussels at this point. I can share a couple of their names that they have new methodologies, and I think I can't. That's why I'm like crunching my brain.
I mean, one of the people that I really loved and was very inspiring was Anne-Therese Kersmaker, of course. With the Steve Reich. For me, it was like okay, that's like a plastic extension in a way. Like how you can.
It's more complicated. Actually, I know a lot about it because I know the assistant of Therese de Keersmaak. So I know how she builds up her work. And one of the things she never works, she has people to work with the scenography. It's an artist, I forgot his name, Michel François. And he builds up the stage. So she talks a lot with them, and she's also good friends with a famous architect from Ghent, who talks about perspective. And she has really good assistants who do most of her work. To be honest. It's true. It's a team. It's not her alone.
It's a process.
What my point is with building up on this musical thinking, that she teaches her students music analysis about how the music is built up from melody, and then she combines this with the system of 9-star key. You know it. It's a Japanese, Chinese, I don't know, system of numbers. And she gives numbers to her dancers.
For the space, no?
And that is their own material often. Sometimes she shows the material. Often it's their own material they develop. And then somebody is a 5 and you are a 9. And so we meet at one point. But if we meet, then all these actions are happening. But I'm thinking of, there is a Moroccan choreographer at this moment who's working a lot about time and changing space and having drawings on the floor and traces. I know him as well. I think he's interesting. And there is Daniel Linehan, who is a choreographer, a dancer, who mixes music with movement, and then there is friction. So because I sometimes I think also this idea of friction or things that don't match or problems in translation are, I think, also interesting topics to talk about. because in a way, I still see within the artwork there is a lot of repetition. There is a lot of bars you somehow make. It's a lot about positions of the left hand in different media. It's about time, and I think also maybe then it's a question like how long can it take? Should it be even going into the area of long durational work?
Yeah.
And then what is long durational in space? That could be an interesting question. So that's a sort of first reaction to what you just shared. But how do you feel about the where does this come from? You think this longing to move into the
I think
three-dimensional aspect you talk.
I think there's an anecdote. No, for example, at a point I thought I was like a very good performer on music, and I did a tour with a flutist, which is a very close friend, and we worked for 10 years together. And in this tour we had like two very difficult pieces to play, and I was having problems playing these pieces, and I was completely concentrated on the right hand. I was like, okay. And then when we finished the tour, we had like a big fight, and I said, and I was working the right hand. I said, your problem, you don't have a problem with the right hand. Your problem is with the left hand. And I thought always that my left hand was perfect, And when she said that, like, oh my God, it was like a revealing. And from that point, which was like 2009 or 10, I was like completely obsessed with the plasticity of the left hand to have everything clean and perfect. I just became like obsessed.
So you have a perfect introduction to your thesis.
Exactly. So that was very important, and I got obsessed by this. When she said, because I was like completely crazy with the right hand, like I was saying, I don't have speed, and I have good speed, but I was like, like crazy. I said, no, it's not. The problem is not the right hand. The problem is the left hand.
Yeah.
And I was like, So when you said that it was revealing when you say why you're concentrated on left hand. I said, okay, of course, that's it.
But maybe then you need to change the title of your piece. Because it's I think it's obvious now.
And
is it a way to understand that way of working, this practice?
I think, and I mean, for me, the plastic extension is not about the performance itself. It is about the work being done to play that piece. So I mean, it's the praxis, all the work that is done behind the curtains,
Yeah, I don't understand really. So what are you saying? Are you saying that by looking at that intensity and working around with so many works with this?
Yeah, I mean, for example,
it's for improving yourself? Is that how?
No, I mean, I think it's like trying to stop time inside the piece and say, okay, when I work a piece, I want to stop and say, okay, what is not happening? What is not working? And also the right hand, but mainly, you see, when in guitar, when there's a sound that doesn't sound, most of the time it's left hand. It sounds like this, left hand. Right hand plugs. But so when you work, you're trying to clean the position. Say, okay, this is. I'm going to maintain the voice. So, for example, the tientos. It's important. I mean, these pieces are for organ. So when I was a friend made this transcription for me for guitar, and it's impossible to keep all the voices at the same time sounding as an organ in guitar. So you have this very little instrument trying to play 4 voices at the same time. So I was like going crazy. I said it would be perfect to have like an installation where you can play the piece just by going like this instead of having to. So I said, okay, let's make this harp in which you can do this, and also everyone can play it, and also create this kind of looping also on the sound, because when people will be interacting, you will hear these fragments are going in time, and so simple, just by going through it, and it was this difficulty, of playing, trying to make this perfect version that believe me, it's impossible, and even if it's very simple, but it's just like impossible to maintain the voices as it's written.
Yeah. If I would take your story now, I would be very interested to build up a thesis around this element of looking at the left hand. It's really, I don't think it's about only solving the problem, but it's also about how your perspective is on it, and maybe it's not even about freezing time. It's about finding ways to sort of solve things to and every piece you created has a different view on it, and I think that for me as an outsider would be interesting.
But also, what we have seen, because some of the pieces that I show are considered on left hand, but that's one of the aspects. And when you asked me about the methodology, that's very important, because and that's why I changed all the material and everything. So in a way, I create a methodology for each piece. I don't have like a fixed, because and I change also the material, and I change also everything, because each piece for me has a different personality, and it would be dishonest from my point of view to always have the same methodology with different music.
Yeah, but I think if I was your artistic supervisor, I would not let you escape, because it's a way to escape to. At one point with the clay, because I know a lot of my students also work with clay and the problems of clay, and I hate clay because I used to work in sculpture also. And everybody made everything gray. It's like beige. I hate it. Find other materials. But what I'm, if I was your artistic supervisor, I would like encourage you to say no, don't walk away, because there's something in those words you said. To make a whole, it's really difficult. I think yes, he's right. I know this, and then you need to solve it, and to solve it, you move on, and there are other materials in there. Because I think sometimes it's not about changing the music, but changing the method to get to go on this path. And for me, sometimes there are like these possibilities, and do not stay only in the one ring of where you are first. So I think, like I would, if you would be, you would do some research in school, I would immediately send to the head of ceramics, because she's amazing in listening to your story with this, and she would advise you to try this, try that material, because it will even get more close to what you're trying to say in a different materiality. But on the side, I think also I think this idea of the muscle memory and this story, I think it's more big than you would think. It somehow arches everything and can get you a focus on what you're doing, on what you're saying, and it's information that is really interesting for other people to read. It's something I would also read, because I also trained as a musician, and one of the topics I trained a lot on is these blockages people have. Sometimes they are mental, sometimes they are like physical, physiognomy, and but there is always also a beauty in this impossibility of this. What I remember, Verno, is like it's almost impossible. I forget about it, and one of my teachers always said, but you have to go for the attempt. And I always thought that's really amazing, just attempt to do it, try to do it, even though you fail, just keep trying, and next time it will be a different attempt.
And about, then you talk about time and space and this thing, about the attempt also. One of the things that, as a child, I remember, I was amazed with this, there was one of the Alfred Hitchcock Presents, one of the little programs he did. There was one in which there was a guy that could freeze time. Exactly. So he had this possibility. He found a watch. He could freeze time, and he would arrange things, you know. So in a way, I always wanted to do that when practicing my music, you know, when I was practicing, like freeze time and try to correct everything that is happening there in order to clean and then go on.
Yeah.
So plastic extension is that's why I say I want to freeze, make it like a parallel thing. In a way, is to extract these moments and put them in space, you know.
Yeah.
And it's a.
But then in the writing, it could be interesting also to talk about what then improved. Like, what is your insights? That's one of the things if you do these kind of things, I'm very interested what you get from it.
Yeah.
So that's some information that you got from it. Can you share something that you say, I made this VR thing, and you feel like from that way of working, I got this.
Yeah, I mean, for example, the VR, that could be one thing, but this, for example, this the fun for this what I call this piece. For example, in this one, I was really working on it's very simple piece, but I was obsessed with these fragments that I was not happy with, and it's so little, it's so small that from taking it out of the context.
So
also,
by blowing it up.
Yeah.
And what did you see?
I saw the movement. I saw my whole body doing one small movement like this, which this movement was this.
Yeah.
So I was unlearning the passage, and the space in which I was performing. I was unlearning and translating it into also being on the ground, because I had to be on the ground to do this, you know. So I mean, the whole position changed and the perspective, you know. It's like taking the same passage but going like this, you know, teaching myself in a way.
Yeah, and a funny thing that you say this unlearning, because the materiality for this you choose it feels almost like I don't know if it's a coincidence, but these are like classic installations for learning, these posters.
Yeah.
But I would even be more specific about it. I mean, by making it bigger, I get it, and then unlearning, I get it, but can be even more specific. I mean, within this small world, which you somehow make lie on in a microscope, I would be even more interested to hear, like, what was it? Was it the muscle? Was it the thinking about it? Was it the amplification that somehow changed the way you behave? Did your finger move? How was the before and after story a little bit?
Yeah.
So if you would maybe go through your notes, I'm very interested also to hear when you build up a case study. Is that you're thinking at the beginning, and then what changed by making like that? What changed it by making it bigger? What was this change? And what was this insight?
Yeah.
And it could also be like there was no insight. Like I did that, but it didn't solve anything. I think that even that realization is meaningful.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you can never amplify things.
Well, I mean, the idea of playing with the graphite was like the training, you know.
Yeah.
So I was like training on learning these movements with the graphite, so you can see all the graphite movements that are recorded also. Yeah. And I said, okay, muscles are like a canvas, you know, all the memories, I mean, you keep it there. I mean, there's a memory of the material in a way, you know, and also in the muscles, you know. And so the idea was to unlearn by the movement, and then at the end, try to shape it with the ink, you know, like make, after the training, in a way, shape it with the ink. And then when I came back to the guitar, of course, I mean, your visual idea of the movement you were doing, it's completely, it has nothing to do. It's completely deranged in a way.
Yeah, and then what happened?
But then, I mean, I just tried to see the movement, and I solved. It solved, really. It really solved. It was so stupid. It was just saying, okay, it is a circle. It's not more than a circle, because I was trying to do some extra movements, you know, like parasite movements that we call in guitar. You know, you have parasite movements, you know. So when I did this, I was like trying to take out the context and say, okay, it's only this that you have to understand that it's happening.
Well,
all the
that's
rest.
very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, all the
Yeah.
parasite movements were out.
Yeah.
And I was training myself, trying to erase it with the graphite, you know, erasing those parallel parasite movements. And then when I went to the thing, I went, okay, it works. And then of course you hear differently also because you are hearing also.
Yeah.
You hear you are hearing this, and also you have the notes also. You are.
But these are things I think are very interesting. These are the things that matter, that can transcend your own practice to others, can solve things also for others. So for me also, as I read the text, please feel free to join me.
But for example, the rhythm, I was trying to keep the same rhythm on the gesture, in a bigger gesture, trying to keep the same rhythm that I was doing microscopically.
Yeah.
So that, of course, that it's different. I mean, and I was doing with the right hand. I was training a left hand problem, treating with the right hand.
I was just writing that down. That you're showing everything that is wrong here, actually, through your
exactly.
It's quite interesting.
One of the things is that you wrote the text about artistic research, but for me personally, I think you have to drop it and just and do this. This is artistic research without explaining what artistic research is. I think what you just told us. It's super interesting. I think and precise and helpful and insightful. And one thing I wanted to talk about, because I want to have also a discussion, because I didn't agree with the doppelganger trauma in music. And I thought it was nice, and so it is not an. There was one aspect in this text that you say you say first of all. Nowadays, random people suffer severely while trying to fill the gap between their online persona and their real persona. But I think that text deserves a lot of research behind it, because it's more complex what is happening online and being a persona. It has to do also with narcissism. It has to do with a mirror. It has to do with the self-image altering. It's very complicated. And even today, there are lots of changes in that. But
for me, I think when we do a recording, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, I did many recordings, and we're trying to everything clean, everything but it's the same treatment people do with their picture.
But I think it's different, because I think with when you take Glenn Gould and Martha Argerich, for me it's a different story. It's about the uprising of technology. It's about possibilities within recording that were not that able before, and it's about not so much the persona being created, but about creation in a recording studio. And for me, it's about this. And what I understand about Glenn Gould, there might be more experts here, but what I understand is this longing to work with time, but to not stay in time, and to work from this a score, and then the possibility to create it in a way where you are composing it the different times you play into this new fake real fake. It's for me it's a real fake. And real fake is like evoking the natural, but it's completely composed. And one of my favorite composers, probably Luc Ferrari. I love him. From a pure nice point of view, but it's because I love the fact that you listen to his work, and it's like a field recording, and it's not. And I like the fact he comes in also in the recording, that he's not like so many field recorders is outside of the recording, but he's in it, and he's having a conversation with his wife, which I love. That the things that are not supposed to be in are in, and this thinking about the real. For me, it's about this, but it's also about. For me, there's a reference personally to romantic painting. I in the book I talk about it, Actually, there's a critique of field recording in my book.
Okay.
but because I went into that area, because there is a parallel with the rise of technology and how people use it, how CIA is using it, how it's used as a political tool, how things are still like this, the real fakes in now also in video, and Obama now, and I don't know, Kanye West, blah blah.
Yeah.
It's very contemporary topic. So that kind of topic might be really almost a huge new PhD.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you can really bite into and devour. So, but you touch so many fields. So now, for me personally, it's you are ready to make some decisions in this, and it's not a problem to keep making other things. It's actually really good that you do that. But it just can help to streamline your doctoral project. But now I also leave the floor to others to respond. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's how do we need a little break right now and continue, or should we just go on?
I don't know. I mean, always breaks always people find the time to go to leave. So but I don't know, as you wish. I mean, if someone wants to leave and has a question, we can talk about it. I don't know how you want to make a pause.
No.
Yeah. I mean, if it's okay, we can go on. I mean, if anyone wants to. So because it's also, I mean, there are so many interesting things coming up. So it would also feel that. The discussion is on. So I would love to open up for questions or continuing diving into topics here that you have been talking. So please.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, I have a comment. Thank you very much. It's really interesting and inspiring. I'm just thinking about this methodology discussion. I think it's really good and important. And maybe if you look at many PhD projects, there's always this process where you produce things and have a very much focus on the content, so to speak. But then there's also this stage where you maybe need to take some kind of reflective or analytical step and compile and so on. And maybe that is where you are now, I think.
Yeah.
So, what do you say, Esther?
I agree. But because I can only support this, because this is I've been into the research boards in university, and we always get hit by their colleagues of science. They're like, that's what is this about, and this is useful, blah blah blah. But I know from my heart it's useful. Only we need to start making it real and not stop about artistic research, but to say. And then one of my co-promoters gave me really super good advice. He said, you get in halfway, and now you have to focus on what am I doing and how am I going to do it, and write about that. Yeah. And then what is in and what is out, and that is it. And then he left, and I was thinking, that's really short advice, but it was very useful. You have to. With the methodology, you have to keep saying, how did I do it? How did I move from what happened, and how did I move from there? And then and then it's about developing a vocabulary, and then be precise. Is it really plastic? Seem to be a lot of linear stuff, and then you have to get real with yourself, and that is the reflective part. I always say to myself, cut the crap, Esther. What are you doing? Really, what are you doing? And it's very confrontational. It's not a nice moment sometimes, but it helps to bring it front. And that's why also I ended up with the title of a thesis I was not that happy with, because I moved away so much from it. So all these things can happen. Yeah. But what is also really useful for developing a methodology is by going through these case studies. So if you start by choosing these works seem to be related, and then you work out a chronology, like this concept, blah blah blah, and then you can, from that you can distill, I think, something from it. And one of the things I think Kent and I also talked about is how can we as a whole communicate it. And I keep giving you the advice: work with a graphic designer, because a graphic designer is specialized in trying to understand what is important for you, and then he or she can give advice on maybe also the structure, how to build it up, and also that maybe it should be, I don't know, it should be a one huge poster, or no, it should not be on a poster, it should be on a smaller folder, or it should be in I don't know, pink, or whatever you talk about. And even these small, stupid, formal things help you. I mean, the book I did is, I always work with a graphic designer, because they really, about their job is like, there is information and knowledge, and then about how to get it out. That is their job. And in a conversation with them is always like, okay, this is important to me, and that's why we should do it like this. So and I always advise it to do it while writing. That sounds strange, but it helps, because it helps in sort of catalog, how do you say, organizing your own desk. But methodology is not the. And so when you start to write, also another advice from my promoter, he said, do not write the introduction. That's thing for last. But I think you already have an introduction. But
it's in process.
Start with the case studies. Start from the work. Really, like, start from there. There is the core. And and then try to find. I think your writing is kind of okay. Also, it's accessible. It's I can understand. Some things need to be discussed, and maybe you keep your stance on. It's also fine. And then it's also interesting to have again in a couple of months another debate. I think so.
I don't know about the plastic extension. I mean, for me, the words are big. For me, in my sense, do make sense on the work that I'm working on, and so I mean, extension means putting the material also in tension, like extending, like putting.
But that's more expansion.
No, I mean, no, because tension, I mean, extension, so it's like taking out and stretching, that's the, I mean, that's the etymological sense of extension, no? And the plastic comes from the plasticity. I mean, the plasticity, the movement. This is what I mean. Then, of course, plastic. The trademark, the TM name of plastic comes from the plastic that it was possible to shape. To shape it. So, but it's a posterior thing. So that's why etymology is super important for me, from my point of view, and also from the musical point of view, that you can understand the music in so many different ways. What does it mean now, and what did it mean before? And try to search and also find your way inside that idea. No? I don't know.
Thank you for a great discussion. Really interesting. I think it perhaps not a question, but it feeds into this what you've been discussing about sort of the relay between theory and practice and research, and we've seen you pull up certain theories that sort of seem to have fed into your artistic methods, and you're calling for a deeper analysis of what you're doing. And I love that you were diving into this act of drawing with this hand and then the other, bringing up the notion of unlearning, whereas we've had a lot of discussion actually around unlearning from the perspective of the ecological theories, Gibson and so on. And I'm just wondering about well, my initial interest also because of your background, because a lot of what is going on, it's related to mediation, I would say.
Yeah.
And therein, I've at least on my end felt that these sort of ecological and active theories they've combined very well in order to start digging in and going deeper in terms of this, and at least starting this relay between theory and practice, also so that it would feed into the next steps, I would say.
Yeah.
So it's just perhaps throwing it in here to hear, like, have a little discussion about whether that would make sense for you, or what your thoughts are on this, and also just in terms of mediation, and perhaps like maybe trying to dig in to hear your thoughts on mediation, because they are starting to come more and more into music analysis, I would say, because of the technological aspects.
Yeah. Oh, me.
You're the guest. Guest first.
I can't immediately answer, but when you talked, for me immediately who came to mind is Tim Ingold.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate enough to meet him, and I invited him over for a couple of lectures, and actually he's working. It's not released, I think, yet, but he's working on this idea of the medium, the in between, and he gave a wonderful lecture of this, something he hasn't written yet about the phone, and he talked about how the phone worked, that it was a window, and that this idea of windows, a concept from Microsoft, of this idea that you look through the world as through a window. But he said also about that something came through and there is a filter, it has openings, and he related to the eyes and the openings, so it was something he was working on. And we had at the time, we had a sort of European network group, and we were in the midst of COVID crisis, and we were discussing about, at that time, a lot of problems people were experiencing in their homes, like there was a lot of stress at home, and especially in Belgium, where the housing is really horrible on many levels, causing a lot of trauma and aggression towards children, women, men, doesn't matter. So it was this huge discussion about this mediating and how we can change space, and how a phone was between, for me. So yeah, I think a lot about when you touch a new medium through, and you work from another medium, so you use a strategy. It's often also you arrive at the cliches because you're not familiar with this new territory, but that doesn't need to stop your curiosity, and so that's one of the things I find really important. But what I find difficult sometimes is exactly what is happening, because sometimes, a lot of the time, there are things that I can't explain, and I can't. It sort of also disappears in this process. And it's that we are not used to talk about it, because a lot of my colleagues in arts, they don't reveal anyway how they work. And it's not only about secrets, but it's also about building the persona. I mean, you have the Anish Kapoors who you sell because you're Anish Kapoor, but he doesn't even touch particular works at all. So it's a so complicated matter, I think. And then for me it's for me now, if I listen to what Bertrand is saying, it's about helping to guide, focus, and in a way streamline things. All my responses are, and maybe also I need to to think about what you were saying about.
Yeah, it was more
finding
sort of
concepts.
throwing it in case, like, because since you're working with new media, if there was any, like, I'm loving everything that Tim is doing in terms of this hive of activity and so on, and what happens in these complex processes that you're sort of dismantling there, and like resisting habits, not unlearning habits through what you're doing. But then maybe through this, I just, because usually our mediation approaches, they are steered towards a certain focus or a certain aspect that we are sort of looking at. I'm just wondering, perhaps tracing it back to the start of your presentation, where you said that you brought up the frustration with being this interpretative musician within the system. Where you had to follow what an artistic director was saying and so on. So I'm perhaps curious in your role within this project, because you have a very dynamic sort of, you're both a performer and a composer, and at the same time I'm seeing that a lot of the repertoire that you're working with, it is related to a tradition that a lot of artistic researchers are actually using their projects to push at, in terms of the word concept, also the canon. I was also thinking about why Fernihow, you know, if we think about, you know, there's a certain puppeteering there, and you are sort of transferring a puppeteering method to that, like these kind of critical questions that come from within the sort of decolonizing act that is taking place within music at the moment. So I'm also, so this is perhaps my curious question as to, yes, you describe your obsession with something going on in your performance, but I'm wondering about the connection between that particular aspect of this interpretation. And I just want to add that in your graph that you brought up about the work and the interpretation and there was the instrument, I think, in the middle.
Instrumental practice.
And I think there was an arrow, the one before it. Before the one you had before it. The one There is not an arrow between instrumental practice and musical score. So a lot of there is, I mean, of course this is maybe done from your perspective as to how you work, but if it was a graph that was presented in order to try to understand how is our voice shaped, there would be an arrow going from this instrumental practice over to the musical score in a way. It feels, at least I would like, we can discuss that.
I mean, because when I mean performance, it's not the public performance.
I'm thinking about from the perspective of affordances. So an instrument allows for certain things, and that is often used by composers to create the musical score. And so I'm just there is a thickness in this that you're grasping here in your left hand. With
I mean, this is the interpreter's perspective, not the composer perspective.
Depends on the composer.
But this is I mean,
okay, so maybe it's good to have that it's yours, because I see it as a sort of as a graph.
But performance, when I mean performance, is I mean a composer is not a performer; it's a composer.
They are starting to it depends.
I mean, I'm a composer also, but I mean when I write the music score, that's the source. I mean, I'm talking about the music score and the I mean.
But that depends on what kind of music. If you take the late number pieces of Cage, there is an arrow going back, because the score allows decisions to be made by musicians to do. So it's I think that is something which somehow is arching a classic musical tradition somehow. It's a representation of it, and there are indeed musical pieces that are not part of actually this scheme, that are outside, where particular instrumental approaches even can influence the score.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
I mean, Julio Estrada, for example. No, but I mean,
so
if I go to each and every composer that they write in a way, I mean, what I mean, this is like the historical way of making music as a performer. You have a source, which is the musical score, then these
But you are-
figures go to the instrumental practice, and then you you perform a sound.
what is lacking in this one is actually the interaction between composer and performer, because there's like historically, I mean, there's a precedence of that pieces have been created through collaboration,
Yeah.
and very much
Yeah.
so within. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
burn up your 50% seminar on this one.
No,
but
no,
it's
no.
like,
but
this is something that might be so maybe if you frame it in a different way, such a graph. But maybe
probably.
my question of what this was a side
Yeah.
comment. I'm just wondering about in your, or just sort of a commentary for your continued phase as to that these questions might arise. Like, yes, your obsession with a gesture that comes out of notation, but there's such complexity and historicity behind that.
As a system.
Yeah, and
there is
also and so
what you're saying, I get what you're trying to say now.
yeah.
Because it's, I did also the conservatory, and the focus there is very much on excellence, but also showing excellence. So I had many debates between teachers. I had a great teacher who said everything can be an attempt, and a teacher said no, there's no attempt, there is only good and bad, and that's and they would never come together. So I had made a choice on how to do it, and but this longing to show how amazing virtuoso you is a nightmare sometimes, for being on stage with somebody collaborating who always wants to show how excellent they are. The story of yesterday was for me from going to a pianist concert, having to endure the Faya and Schubert and Rachmaninoff is not because I don't like these composers, but the fact that he really, the focus there was showing how great he was, and we all applauded on this magnificent virtuoso, and that's the system we are educated in, and it's somehow still present. Somehow this comes from that, I think. And then having to being more mature, and then having to let go somehow, or that fixation becomes something else. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But that is what I make from what you're trying to say.
It's also about sort of, I'm thinking also about your role as a performer, as a composer, like these versus what, and what you were driving at, what is the main focus of this project. And I'm thinking also, because I was thinking also about the topic of virtuosity in this instance. I mean, it's so tied up with that, and thinking about your gorgeous, these imprints of your fingers, of the paperwork. But you were using the word mapping there, and then at least in the visual arts, in terms of creating affective mapping that pushes at the grid and all that, they become something. This had such almost a virtuosic beauty in it as well. So I start wondering, is it to push at, or is it to stay within and master it even better, or I think that was sort of the thoughts it brought forth. Not to be answered now, but it's
No, I think, to be honest, the repertoire that I'm extending are difficult pieces.
Yeah, that's clear.
The stories of Viralov, and the Fernicle also, and the Dientos by Cabezon. These are
nightmares.
I'm just thinking, I think this is really interesting discussion with
the music score.
Yes, and the relationship to the score and to the composer, and between the performer and composer and so on, because that's a power relation also. And dynamic relation too. But I'm thinking of the concept of tiento. Because if you're talking about the Cabezon and the organ music, there you don't have that kind of relationship, even historically, because the improvisatory aspect of the performer's practice is also influencing the score and the view of the score, and how you relate to it while you play. And then, as you have described, the double role of the, for example, Cabezon. that his work then includes this aspect
Mm-hmm.
in the tiento. I think that, I mean, the tiento is a improvisatory practice.
Yeah, yeah.
And how do you see that? That is also an extension, I mean, of the, in that case, of the practice of playing a score.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
It's like an attempt to develop.
Yeah, I mean the idea. I mean, Cabezón, of course, these tientos were improvisations, you know? And he was not able to transcribe. So his son, at the, when he was like, we started to learn music, and he was visually able. So the son started to transcribe what Daddy was doing on the organ, right? So, of course, I mean, we are seeing that there's an object that fixes time, which is the score in a way, you know. So this becomes like the law in a way, and this, even though the origin of fantasy, tiento, ricercare, and all these kind of forms which are very free forms, they have this score. But what happened? Interpreters were very, I mean, at that time, were less respectful. So, not very respectful, but they were more creative in a way. So they started to make ornamentation. So this ornamentation would help to have this fixed score, which was like a kind of a map or a choreographic movement in which you can ornament with your own taste. And there's a lot of methods of ornamentation. You know, you can, the Italian ones, they go like crazy. You have the Spanish ones. So you have a lot of methodologies to ornament. So these ornamentation methods would help you improvise in a way inside a fixed structure, which was the score. This improvisation now thing on the score, since the 19th century, kind of disappeared. You know, we have to respect, and of course, the connection that I found with Venrooij was that there was so much information. He created a fixed object in which was full of information, in which when you are performing, you have to make choices, live choices, because of the difficulty that was imposed on the score. So, in a way, that's my direct relationship with the performing and kind of improvisation, ornamentation, or the liberty that I found in a music score also, like Venrooij, which is completely written, everything is precise and everything. But he found a way to have this kind of liberty inside a 19th century obsolete object, which is a music score, in a way.
But yeah, again, this is also maybe also an important, what came up now is also something very important, I think. Because there, with people, power relationship. I think.
Of course. Yeah.
But also the way we look from it, from the 21st century look to scores. I mean, the way we deal with it. I trained with Van Kasbergen, who wrote Bach and the Number.
Yeah.
So he's crazy, and he admitted it a bit. And his colleague who wrote it, I got also music analysis from his colleague. And the way, what I found interesting now, by having taught by them, is the way we see things and we project ourselves. I actually talked to them about it, like, aren't we projecting ourselves on things that are even lost in time? And then he's like, yes, but count it. It is true. It is his name. And we did one class. It was amazing. You know, but it's also there's so much to be said about this power dynamic. I think is at the core of what you're saying as well.
I mean, I always had the relationship with the score as a book of rules, no? I mean, when you approach the score, I was always saying, okay, these are the rules. This is how you play. It's like when you go to a game, you have some rules, and you can do this. I mean, you have these rules, and you have to respect them, because if not, you're not playing the game.
Yeah,
you know?
but I started to doubt the composers, me personally, because I was thinking, no, you don't want me to play it. You know, you're tricking me. You're this is a way to you know.
And when you work with composers, I mean, they are always like you know, of course you can do it. Like, what? You know, I mean, you are. I remember when I started to work with composers, you know, they would give me the score, and I was like, thank you for that. And this passage, I said, it's impossible, Like, I mean, I exaggerated. They were putting like 7 notes in a six-string guitar, but I said, it's impossible to play 7 notes. Yeah? So can I play 6? Of course. Like, really? I mean, I don't have to be strict and everything, because this is the teaching. I mean, the teaching as we suffer, the teaching is super strict, and you have to do this, blah, 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 and everything. So in a way, you're finding this restraint jacket.
I think I talked with Kent about it yesterday. I think that there's something really wrong with our music education system in Europe and maybe abroad. But that's also something that you can touch. Like there's a lot of insight there as well. Like you're a slave to the score. Yeah.
And also, about the doppelganger, I mean, for me, in a way, we are also slaves of recordings. I mean,
why?
How? All my life.
Yeah,
I mean,
tell me. What? This is interesting.
I mean, when
you're a slave to recording. How?
Of course, because
how?
I mean, when I want to play a piece, for example, I wanted to play a piece.
It never sounds like a recording.
Exactly, and you want to go and you see these magnificent versions, and you're like, oh my God, and I remember I was like, okay, I'm going backwards, and how the hell is he doing this? So, and I have a lot of pieces in my head that I never played because there's magnificent versions already, and there was a big anecdote about Claudia Rao and Cifra. Claudia Rao was recording the Hungarian Rhapsodies. And at the moment he heard there was this George Cifra version, which is like a monstrous version, and he stopped recording. He said, I cannot do it better,
Yeah, but
so,
it's the same with hip hop, because hip hop concerts are awful, and because hip hop is for me really a recording studio production.
Yeah,
that's like where you get the bass and the crunch and everything perfect.
Yeah,
but then you go and see Kanye West. I'm not a fan of Kanye West, just to be sure, but never liked him.
You mentioned twice.
Yeah, I know. He's in my mind because of other reasons he came in, but it's crap. But but then you need to have a larger than life persona with a or transform ornament yourself into a plant or some ephemeral being. But I think that is something also very interesting. But you see, so many topics you touch.
You make me talk, huh?
Yeah, sorry.
You all make me talk, so I talk. That's not a problem.
No,
probably writing about it. I'm not talking about it.
So, do we have more questions? Please fill in, because we are actually approaching.
Okay.
So please, if there are,
I have a
Sista Fragor.
I wanted to say something about your idea of creating this new catalog of. You only touched upon it with the when working with the visually impaired.
Yeah.
A new catalog of
sounds and
sounds.
textures. Yeah.
So how would that fit in with the overall structure?
I mean, it would be, for me, it would be like a, I mean, it's impossible. I mean, as we saw already with the workshop, we saw that there are relationships that are quite, I mean, there are certain patterns of associating certain sounds with certain objects and certain patterns of certain figures that are associated with certain musical things that are happening. So I hope that after the workshops are done, the ones that are left to do, we can have like a certain pattern of gestures and associations. And the idea is to create this catalog to translate, I mean, to translate the music of, my idea is to translate, I hope, fully one in my life, if to translate all the tientos by Cabezon in this kind of texture and installations, to make like this kind of alphabet in a way, so I can translate directly for the visually impaired and the hearing impaired, and it would be like a kind of parallel dictionary or catalog, which is there, but I'm not really using it in a way. I mean, because I'm trying to create a different outside this research that is being done. I would propose something like which is mine. The plastic extension has not really this kind of alphabet. No? I'm not trying to translate in a way like that, but it's like a kind of a result of the research done that it's able to use, and it's possible to have a kind of not. I don't want to normalize in a way neither. To normalize all the data into the C sharp is like this and so mainly but I mean so informal in a way. The idea of the results that we'll have, that probably should be left like a testimony, like a history of what happened, and and don't follow what they did in Copenhagen, this access, to the what you explained, the access of the historical materials that are not. I mean, because I met Jan-Erik. I went to the internet to search for the blind history, and I saw a conference here in Paris, and he was talking about the catalogs. There was a collection of materials that were done by the visually impaired blind in Copenhagen that were figures, clay figures. I mean, and at a certain point, in order to keep them as an archive, they were put into crystal. They were put in vitrines. So now the visually impaired will not have access to their own history.
Yeah.
So in a way, that was like very revealing about this parallel history that we're not conscious about being visually able in a way. So I don't know. I mean, the idea is to expose them as much as possible and to keep them as a history archive, a historical archive of touch and associations, and create an alphabet. I mean, in a way of these things,
But by others.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, by others.
So that's interesting. So the tension there between your own hard working with the left hand and the bad memory.
The bad habits.
That's appearing every time, and then this other catalog that is created by others.
I mean, it's like a more direct idea of how do you say, like a resume of what I want to do with the idea of others, and people that are probably more, I think, more sound sensitive in a way. I mean, I won't go to this theory that you explained in the article. This guy that says since they are using only 4 senses, it's more concentrated. You have more power. It's like a battery, Since they are visually impaired, they have like only the energy is concentrated only in 4, so it's in haste, I mean, it's a very nice theory, 19th century theory, of course,
Neoliberalism is like a
exactly, Since we're taking out this sense, it has more energy, So it's nice. I mean, it's lovely, but it's a very 19th century stuff, But I think visually impaired can give, I hope, can unveil certain aspects or ideas about the shapes and associations with sound and the figures and things that we don't see and they see. See in a way, and this unveiling of information for me is very important because I hope we can reach.
Is this this fascinates me and so, but we were talking about method and avoiding maybe methodology by creating various methodologies. So, so is this a way to escape the anxiety of methodology by letting others?
Yeah, I mean there's a methodology in the test order. and the objects and sounds which are related to. So that would be like a kind of this workshop has a certain methodology to create an alphabet, this catalog of sounds. But yeah.
Isn't then that you're talking about basically an artistic method, or are you using? I'm just wondering about the relation of what are we talking about when we are talking about method here? Because you're actually setting up an artistic sort of laboratory. Yeah. And it's like, what are the pre-deciding rules and so on. So it's just so that we don't start. Yeah, I mean,
so it's a series of tests that you have the 24 scale with quarter tones, and you have also intervals also. And you have modes, attack modes. Everything is issued from the guitar, also.
So this is basically an artistic method we're talking about.
Of course, but I didn't want to take a computer sound or anything. I said, okay, finally the most honest way, and that's because it's my research. I will do it with my guitar myself. So that's kind of the artistic liberty I took, and so this methodology of the test, I mean, this order, has to associate with certain figures, also verbal association, which is the most poetic way, in a way, like free association of what sound, how does it smell, how does it taste, how do you see, what do you think, I mean, can you relate? So these free associations can bring also different material, different ideas into the music, you know, and smells.
I mean, I think it's a brilliant project, and it has such potential, because like if we think about artistic research in music, and it's like what is always brought to the table at the beginning is you know, this embodied tacit knowledge and Polanyi and, you know, Merleau-Ponty, and there have been, I mean, at least on my end, I have taken in like I think one reference like as a footnote where people with other abilities say that this is not fair, because they usually always use the man with the blind man with the walking stick to explain what we are doing, and so you have a tremendous opportunity to actually address that problem with the artistic research.
One of the things that I always argue, and also because I work with special needs also, and is that people go there to teach. Exactly. No, I go there to learn. But what we are doing is to learn. We're not teaching them. I mean, we're not going to lecture them. We're not going to patronize them with stupid activities like basic activities. No, we want to unveil. We want to learn. We want to go there and see things that we don't know, and that's the main thing. And because I when I work with special needs, I always had this. People that work with special needs, they have very strict agendas. They have their agenda, which is like, okay, they have to be able to do these very basic things and stuff like this. I said, why? Why do we have to keep patronizing and to keep giving these activities in order to be like, they're almost like a normal. Yeah, this horrible thing that and it's integrated in the language, in the vocabulary, in special needs, and it's horrible. And no, we let them create their own world, and we have to go in their world and learn and teach, and then bring everything and teach to ourselves things we are missing, because there's a lot of information gaps that we create with technology, with medium. There's a lot of information sensory gaps that we're creating each day. When encyclopedia was created, we took certain knowledge, we put it there. The other one, we took it out. And it's very basic. When all this, when we were burning witches, we were burning knowledge in a way. And this is very clear in the Italian, what's her name? The witch and the Caliban and the witch. What's her name? Well, it's a feminist philosopher, brilliant.
I don't know.
Italian name, but in America.
I don't know.
She has this brilliant book about the Caliban and the witch, and she says that how women and witches were burned. So when we create encyclopedia, we are just like normalizing knowledge, and we're taking a lot of knowledge. And of course, when encyclopedia was created, they didn't talk about the people who are like mentally ill. If you go to Michel Foucault, l'histoire de la folie in the Age Classique, you can see a lot of knowledge that was taken away, that was put into institutes and completely aparted from the normal society. Yeah. I mean, But of course, the music score is encyclopedia. So all these information gaps can be revealed in a way when people are not really living in our world, in our five sense world. So that's why I go there. That's why I want to learn there.
But then I think also, again, the word methodology comes up again. Is if you're not too directive, or I think it starts with just listening, I think. And there is this wonderful book on Sight and Insight by John Hull about him. He's an academic and he became blind. I think he teaches theology, and for me that book was because I also started collaborating on seeing acoustic and auditive knowledge, but not only from the people who hear, but people who are blind or non-hearing. But what I started to notice that it's very complicated, this visually impaired, because you have so many kinds. You have people who still see something. You have people who are born blind, which is really different from people who turned blind. And there is this how they talk about image is really different. So for me, what I noticed from that book is that it starts with just listening, and I'm thinking like that's one of the steps I think maybe is also to be considered within the catalogue. I was shocked in the way John Hull talked about the dramatics of a fence. It's like that is something which is really new for me. And that they suddenly feel an opening of a doorway, and or that I liked the best bit with his book was he saying sometimes I have a feeling that the building doesn't want me here, and often it's an empty building. He's teaching a lot, so he enters a school, and he's saying then he's using his stick to make more sound, because he says, I'm the boss here. I control this. And I thought these are things that you not even are aware of. So also for me from the video, the most interesting part was the aspects that the women talked about a bit off screen, actually, like, oh, I don't want to be in the image. I thought that's like hugely interesting because I'm too fat, or wow, there is this idea of image, self-image somehow, and that I think that kind of information, maybe the catalog therefore must be something which is really not skip too many steps.
No.
Like make it really hard.
One of the readings that I did, and it was Jan-Erik that told me to read, is went to go this More Than Meets the Eye by Georgina Clegg. And she talks how when she goes to a museum, she goes with different persons. So she goes like someone that is very objective and someone that is completely subjective. So she goes with a very objective person. And he's trying. So you see a painting here, and you have this size, blah blah blah. Blah. So it's a description of the painting. And she said, "Please, don't be objective. Tell me what you feel. What I need is to be subjective in a way." So she avoids being objective because objectivity for her is unimportant. So, in a way, if I might try to make a normalization of the figures or the drawings, that would be being objective, and probably that's what we should try to avoid doing this catalog, in a way. Not be objective. Try to put all the information, don't be like an encyclopedia and normalize everything, just leave it open.
But use this also in your own practice then. Do not be objective.
I will try to.
I think that's key.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good ending word.
Yeah.
For this 50% seminar.
Can I just?
Yes, please.
It's a moral question, because I often think that the contribution of artistic research to the wider society of knowledge development in the academia and everywhere else is the competence that artists and performers and others in this field have to be both objective and subjective. I mean, that if you train as a musician or whatever, you also train the capacity to be in both those states, so to speak. And I think that's really interesting, because you often hear in science discussions that subjectivity is something bad, but that is because nobody practices subjectivity as related to, or it is not developed as a practice. So that's just I don't know what you think, but that's
I noticed that. I didn't notice that. I was actually surprised by the academic world, because I met a professor of physics and acoustics and of mathematics, so I was really a bit scared, and astrophysica, so I was like silent, and I was really shocked by how much intuition they used and how much creativity they had. I think that they found a way to have a common language, and I felt like, okay, I had another feeling that they were actually subjective, but we were we could be part of that, and we just need to develop that, of step into that way of talking and language by articulating things a lot.
Yeah, I think maybe the technical those disciplines are closer. Because maybe the social science there it's more. That's where.
I was really surprised because I talked with a wonderful woman from iconology, Barbara Baart, and she was like this huge diva, like far away, and I felt immediately like she was very competitive. And then I met this woman from acoustics who was so creative, and I was really surprised and to talk to them, and then there was an initiative from the board of the university saying, we want to have this arts and science committee, and everybody was from physics. I was thinking, this is strange. And they said, you know why? We are also practice based, because we are in the lab, and that fact that they are, and I thought we can learn so much from them, but they can learn also a lot from us. And the way we can, I think that this overview of this mediating thing and being able to empathize with something from a different field or a story is really strong in our practice. So
I think the main difference. Sorry, the main difference between scientific and artistic research. I mean that artistic research is allowed to embrace diversity in the results. And now that we're talking about diversity and in sex and in society and everything, we should think that the artistic research also is the beginning of embracing this diversity of results. Because the results, they will never be the same. That was one of the things that say, okay, scientific research has to make this methodology so that you can have always the same result. But artistic research, it's impossible that can do the same results. So this diversity of results should be like integrated in the idea of doing research and not normalize them. So it's
no, I just want to. I mean, I agree. As a scientist from physics, chemistry, engineering. But I would also say that intuition is a large part, and especially as an experimentalist, it's not the same way. Also, I would argue sometimes that at least all science is subjective in how you choose what you are looking at. I mean, even if you do it objectively, you choose to look at this, but not that.
From a particular, I agree. Thank you, Bertrand.
Thank you so much, Bertrand. Especially thanks, Esther, for coming to Malmö and having this wonderful discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you.